Meeting for January 3rd, 2018 to order. First item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chairman, I move to set the time of adjournment at 8 p.m.
Eric?
Second.
Second. So this is an adjournment prior to the publicly announced time.
Correct.
I think that is out of order.
No. The time to adjourn can be fixed. A motion to set the time for adjournment can be fixed at any time during the meeting.
Right, but not prior to regularly scheduled business of the committee.
I would take issue with that.
We'll have to take a point of order on that, and we'll deal with that. But your point is noted, and we definitely will try to be out of here by 8 or shortly after. Next item is public comment. I have Jennifer Weston.
Unenikan, good evening. Natasuis Jennifer Weston, New Toma Standing Rock at Natanakons Masipiet. My name is Jennifer, and I'm from Standing Rock, but I work here in Mashpee. I'm the Language Department Director for the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe, and I also work for the Wampanoag Language Reclamation Project. And while our Education Director is out on maternity leave right now, I wanted to provide an update to the school committee about the very successful high school language class that WLRP has been funding partially through a grant from the Wampanoag Tribe. But I also want to make you aware of the extra costs that we're incurring as a nonprofit, and also to make you aware of the additional requests that we've had for expanded course offerings, just as a way to give you sort of a heads up about upcoming budgeting and planning for the coming academic years. So presently we offer Wampanoag Pasuk, or Wampanoag Language Level 1. We offered that as a course that any student in the district could register for, and with the support of Superintendent DeBoer and Principal Balistracci, we were fortunate to be able to offer students a world language credit for that. And only 7 students enrolled. They are all tribal students, but this was an opportunity that was made available to the broader student population. And since commencing this course, which is calendared for 180 days, or the full range of the school year, we've had requests from middle school student families to add a course for tribal or other students to also be able to take Wampanoag language. We also have had requests from the current students in the class to be able to enroll in Wampanoag Nis, or Wampanoag Language Level 2, in the coming year. Unfortunately, this is where we're getting into some planning and budgeting areas that I wanted to make you aware of as the school committee. So the current U.S. Department of Education grant that funds Wampanoag Pasuk supports our teachers' instructional time at around $14,000 per year. And the total cost of the course is roughly $24,000 when you include the teacher time, the planning time, the grading time, and also the course design time. So WLRP is covering the cost of the additional course that is not supported by the grant, and that's something that we expressed in the application and proposal that we were happy to do. We think this is a fundamental element that's been missing from Mashpee students and Mashpee tribal students in particular from their educational experience. But unfortunately, we are not able at this time to tell tribal families that we can add 2 more language classes at those same cost levels for the fall. So because the middle and high school students' schedules are, I think they're different by about 10 minutes or so during the course of the day, we would have to assign another teacher to offer a middle school language class. We had originally hoped that the middle school students could come to school or come to the language class with the high school students, but that's not been able to be implemented in practice. And then, of course, the current students would like to be able to continue their world language education and their world language credits with their indigenous language, and they would like to take Wampanoag Level 2 in the fall, but again, we would need to assign an additional hour of teaching time in order to cover that. So our business manager and I, who's recently served as the tribe's planning and development director, Judy Urquhart, we're looking at additional grant proposals to seek to cover these costs because we feel really strongly that this is something that should be offered to tribal students especially, but to all Mashpee students. But I did want to just flag this as a forthcoming budget shortfall in terms of making these opportunities available to the student body. WLRP is a registered nonprofit here in the state of Massachusetts. It's about 22 years old. It was founded by our linguistic director, Jesse Baird, and by an elder from the Aquina Wampanoag tribe as well. And we maintain this 501c3 status and serve as contractors for the tribal government. So we're not tribal employees. But we also have, for the past, I believe since 2014, offered lunch bunches or language enrichment opportunities for the Coombs and Quashnet students, which generally totals about 4 to 5 hours a week of our teachers' instructional time, or roughly, I think it adds up to about just under $15,000 a year. So again, that's teacher time that we fund and support, and we're happy to do so because tribal students have expressed a huge amount of enthusiasm for the activities that they participate in. And when we actually cut back a little bit early last fall because we opened our preschool and kindergarten, we had a whole deluge of complaints from tribal parents that their kids really missed it too much and we needed to reprioritize that. So I'm happy to provide these numbers to you in writing, but I just did want to come and give you sort of an update on some of the budgeting that we're doing at the level of our staff and our board of directors. We're governed by an intertribal board with leadership drawn from the Aquina, the Mashpee, the Assonet Band, and the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe. So we're an intertribal nonprofit. But we do serve primarily Mashpee families because that's the largest population, and we're based here in Mashpee with the generous support of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. So thank you very much for your time, and I will forward some information to Superintendent DuBois that can be shared with you, just so you have a better handle on how some of these requests might be supported looking forward if you hear from other tribal families or from students within the district as well, perhaps the local Indian Education Parent Committee. But just wanted to be sure to give you guys the update on the costs and the forthcoming cost as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So,
So typically, public comment is public comment only. But if you do have questions, I mean, that is an exception.
so what are you telling me? I can't ask a question?
Not during public comment.
Okay, well, we can communicate
But-
further in writing.
But clearly,
Well, can I ask you a question?
you may ask the superintendent.
Okay,
It's probably
was
better
it clear
for
to you then that the level one is going to continue in the fall with the existing funding, and that what cannot be offered in the fall at present is a expansion to middle school students and a level 2 offering?
From my perspective, we started it as a pilot with the hope that it was going to expand. I don't know that we ever anticipated that whether the grant could be rewritten in any way, but that the funding would not be something that they could support. But I would love to see the current students be able to take the level 2 version. I don't know whether there's a way for, maybe we only are able to offer the 1 and the 2, and the middle school has to wait till they're in 9th grade, or if we can do some creative scheduling. So as to whether there'll be 2 sessions or 3 sessions next year, I don't know.
And it's also an option to offer level 2 this fall and take a year off from level 1. So that's another possibility that we've discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Student Advisory Council. It's my understanding Mr. Hannah III is ill.
No, he's not.
Under the weather.
Under the weather.
Under the real weather. So next item is a update on special education. No? I'm sorry, I skipped over that. Presentation of certificate of academic excellence to Brianna Cheatham.
All right, so Brianna is here. Maybe I'll just use this one over here. I have some lovely things to say about you. And I want to make sure we all hear them. Is this all right to take it out? Yeah. All right, so it's my pleasure to be able to present to Brianna Cheatham. Come on up, she's a senior. She's the recipient of this year's Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, which is MASS, Certificate of Academic Excellence. So in reading some of the things that were submitted on Brianna's behalf, I kind of tried to consolidate. So I have a section that I started out calling nouns. Brianna Cheatham is. She is a standout in the classroom, on the field and court, and in the community. She is a true old soul. She is a people person who makes everyone around her feel special. She is secretary of the Mashpee Wampanoag Youth Tribal Council. She's a leader, a planner, secretary of the class of 2018 for the past 4 years, vice president of the Key Club and a member of for the past 4 years as well, member of the National Honor Society, varsity cheerleader, a dancer since age 3 and competitive dancer for the last 8 years. She's a volunteer dance mentor coach, a dance hero at the Riverview School in Sandwich, a positive contributor to society, an ambassador for Mashpee during the Girls STEM Summit, a summer camp counselor, a volunteer, and I made up this noun, I'm not sure it is one, but she's a smiler. Because whenever you see her, she has a very captivating smile on her face that makes you feel better. My next section is adjectives to describe Brianna Cheatham. And there's quite a list, and every single one of these is absolutely true. So she is definitely one of our role models in Mashpee. She's consistent, goal-oriented, dedicated to her education and future plans, compassionate, reflective, responsible, dependable, involved, genuine, creative, outgoing, organized, optimistic, positive, empathetic, intuitive, understanding, community service-oriented, motivationally driven, hardworking, enthusiastic, kind, determined, thoughtful, and school-spirited. During her time at MMHS, she has taken the following AP classes, and if I missed any, make sure you tell me. AP Physics 1, AP Calculus, AP Literature, AP Biology, AP English Literature, and AP Human Geography. Okay. The colleges she has applied to, and there was one other question mark whether you've heard or not. Boston College, and she has heard that she's accepted there. UConn, she's waiting to hear, is that still true?
Yeah.
Drexel University, accepted. Loyola Chicago University, accepted. UMass Amherst, waiting to hear. UMass Boston, accepted. Pace University, accepted. University of Rhode Island, waiting to hear. Temple University, accepted. And Villanova University, waiting for regular decision to hear. Her future plans is to become a nurse. Other interesting information, she's currently ranked 4th out of 102 students in the class of 2018, and she has a weighted GPA of 102.8%. And that Brianna is proud of her school, her community, her tribe, and most importantly, her family and friends. And when asked what sets her apart from others, Brianna simply states, "I care a lot about the well-being of others and will go above and beyond to do the things I know will benefit the ones I love." Isn't that awesome? This is your official certificate.
Thank you.
And you can let all those colleges that you're still waiting to hear from know that you have this. And if her family would like to come up for a picture, we would love for that to take place. And we have
Oh, there's this thing.
She always asks me whenever I see her, because I'm always taking pictures of her. Is this going on Twitter? And I suggested Facebook.
The answer is yes.
I don't know if you'd like to say anything.
We'll give you a chance if you want to. Let me get one of these too.
And that is going on Facebook.
I just want to say thank you to I just want to say thank you to Mr. Board. It's been awesome because when I was in 3rd grade, yeah, she was my principal. So it's kind of cool because it's like a full round circle. Now I'm a senior and now she's my superintendent. So I just want to say thank you to her.
And I'm just going to add what a pleasure it has been for me to be able to watch her grow through her journey through Mashpee. So she's a fabulous, fabulous student and a person.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how we're gonna top that.
And not that this isn't a fabulous meeting though, but you know you don't have to stay long. But we love having you.
We would love you to
Today
stay.
than we have ever had. Usually have.
All right, then moving on. Next thing. Update on special education. Community.
It won't magnify.
Because I don't like hearing the echo. Hello. So first I just wanted to start off by saying that I've enjoyed getting to know the Mashpee School community over the last 6 months. So, one of the most exciting things about Mashpee is that they've embraced the Massachusetts multi-tiered system of support. And this is basically to ensure all students throughout the district receive the education that they need. And what it has allowed for special education students is it's allowed them to be in the general education classrooms as much as possible. Prior to that, a lot of students were pulled out for English or reading or math outside of the general education classroom. This has allowed them to stay in the classroom and get the services that they need there. Another thing, because of the MTSS, inclusion is valued here in the district, which is great, and really under the IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, we're as a school district required to educate students in the least restrictive environment, which is in the general education classroom. Recent research too has told us that students who are educated in inclusive classrooms are more likely to graduate from high school and do better on MCAS tests. So full inclusion is considered to be when students are in their general ed classroom for 80% of the day or more. There's generally 4 types of placements in special education. So there's full inclusion, there's partial inclusion, which is when students are in the general education classroom and they receive some services out of the general education classroom. And that's being in the general education classroom 40 to 79% of the time. And then there's 2 other placements. One is substantially separate, which is when students are removed from the general ed classroom for their entire day, and then out-of-district placements. So in Mashpee, we have 73% of our students are in full inclusion all day long. So that means they're in their general ed classroom 80% of the day or more. 11.5% of the population is in partial inclusion, so that means that they're in and out of the general ed classroom throughout their day. 7% of the students in the district fall into sub-separate classrooms, which is when they're pulled out of the classroom for the majority of their day. And then 6.5% of the students in the district are in out-of-district placements. And it's not students in the district, it's the special education students in the district. So one of the exciting things that happened last year is in terms of the MCAS scores at the high school. 91% of the 10th grade students who are on IEPs, all of them passed MCAS, and but not just in the needs improvement category, but they got in the proficient and the advanced categories, which was very exciting. And we contribute that to all the time that they're spending in the general ed classrooms, getting that high quality instruction. So in terms of, and that was compared to 69% at the state level too, so that was pretty exciting. So in terms of staffing, each building has a special education team chairperson who is also the school psychologist. So there's one at KCC, one at Quashnet, and one at Mashpee Middle High School. So those people run the team meetings there. They oversee the IEPs in the building, because I can't be in all of the buildings. So, and I meet with them twice a month, and we talk about just any issues that are coming up, how we can be more consistent across the district in terms of the buildings and transitions within the buildings for the students and the families and the staff. And then in terms of staffing for special education teachers, there's 20 special education teachers across the district. There's 4 at KCC, 8 at Quashnet, and 8 at the Mashpee Middle High School. There's also 1 part-time physical therapist who works 3 days a week, 4 speech and language therapists, and 2 occupational therapists. And I just want to say that all of the team chairs, the special education teachers, and the related service providers they all work tirelessly to provide the best education for the students in the district. And I appreciate the hard work they do for the students every single day. So like I said, in terms of inclusion, we are always looking to include students to the maximum extent possible. But that being said, if a student's struggling in a classroom and they're having severe behavioral issues or having a difficult time, we certainly don't want them to sit in the classroom and struggle in front of their peers, because that can lead to self-confidence issues, and we don't want that for the students. So we're always looking at data, and we're always looking at trends to see, should students be pulled during a difficult time during their school day, so that they're not faced with those, and then with those issues in front of their peers, and work on those things outside of the room and bring them back into the classroom once they've learned those coping strategies. In all of the buildings, the special education teachers will push into the classrooms, is what we call it, and the students will receive their special education services after the Tier 1 instruction. So after they get the whole class instruction with the teacher, they may work in a group with a special education teacher. Some of the classrooms have co-teachers, where there's 2 teachers, a regular ed teacher, and a special education teacher teaching in the classroom. So it just kind of depends on the grade level and what's offered for that level. So we offer a continuum of services. So there's, like I said, full inclusion, partial inclusion, and then we also have some substantially separate programs. Although I feel like a lot of our substantially separate programs are really almost partial inclusion, because the students aren't typically, with a few exceptions, in the substantially separate classroom all day long. So at KCC, there's 2 substantially separate programs, one for students who have autism and one for students who have emotional or health impairments. And again, we look at when are students most successful in the general ed classroom, and we start putting the students in the classroom during that time and gradually add as the student becomes more successful during that day. Quashnet has one self-contained program for students who have health or emotional impairments, and some of those students also have a specific learning disability. And again, there are some students that require to be in that room all day long, but the majority of the students are just accessing that program. So if they're in a class and they're getting upset about maybe a difficult task that's been presented to them and they need a separate space to kind of go and calm down and process with somebody and complete the work, that space is offered for them. As soon as they're ready to go back to the classroom, they'll go back to the classroom. And then at Mashpee Middle High School, we have 4 substantially separate programs. One is for students on the autism spectrum, and again, those students it's more of a partial inclusion. So again, they have the space to go should they need to, but they are taking classes in the general ed with other students. There's another program for students with intellectual impairments. And at this point in time, they're in that classroom all day long, but we are looking to figure out ways to include those students more. And then we have a transition program at the high school that works on, for students, and I don't know if you know, who are on IEPs, some of them will be here until they're 22 years old. And so once they turn 18, we have a transition program that works on life skills for after high school when they babysit, age 22. I just wanted to kind of update you on some out-of-district placements. I know sometimes it gets a little bit confusing because of the laws that we have to follow in terms of special education and out-of-district placements. Over the last couple of years, there have been several students that have moved into Mashpee that were already in out-of-district placements. So when students come to us in an out-of-district placement, they stay in an out-of-district placement. If we find that we have a program for them or we can bring them back, we would discuss that at the team meeting and think about ways that we could bring them back. But we're required to follow the IEP that has that placement until we meet again. The other thing I think sometimes that can impact the special education budget and out-of-district placements is students today are experiencing more trauma at home, and a lot of times I've seen a lot of students get pulled out of their home situations. They're not allowed to live at their house anymore, and DCF gets custody. Some of these students have significant behavioral challenges or special needs and can't just go into any type of foster home. They need a specialized foster home, and there's not a lot of those around. So what sometimes happens is DCF will place a student in a residential facility, and the school district becomes responsible for a portion of that residential cost. And sometimes there's a day placement rate, and sometimes there's not one. And when there's not, it becomes a 50-50 cost share, which if it's a $200,000 placement, the district will be responsible for paying for $100,000 of it. So I know sometimes these things come up, and I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification on that. And I know, Dawn, I think you had a question at one point earlier in the year, and primarily the students that are in our out-of-district placements currently are students that have significant social, emotional, behavioral needs, significant intellectual impairments, or severe medical needs. And that's why they're not here with us and we're educating them elsewhere. So I think one of the things that I think all schools, at least in Massachusetts, are struggling with right now is that students are coming in, they've been exposed to a lot more trauma. They're coming in with severe social, emotional, and behavioral needs. And we here at the schools are trying to come up with ways that we can educate these students and keep them in their classrooms. A lot of times there's a lot of safety or aggressive concerns surrounding some of these students, and so again we're looking to see what we can do and how we can accommodate their needs here. But those are the students that we typically see when it comes to safety for themselves and for others, and it's usually around aggression that we end up thinking about outside placements for those students. And it's becoming more and more prevalent these days. So in terms of plans moving forward over the next year, from the kind of 6-month assessment that I've been here working on things, a few of the things that I want to implement for next year is working on standards-based IEPs, which is basically just looking at what are the skill deficits related to the curriculum standards, and what do students need to master those standards, and what skills and what do we need to do as special education teachers to provide helping those students learn those skills, and using formative assessments to make sure that we are doing the right things for the students, and if we're not, changing it up and figuring out why it's not working and coming up with a new plan. Ongoing professional development, I think, for paraprofessionals and for the teachers is very important in terms of inclusive practices. What are the things that teachers need to be doing to keep their students in the classroom? And in terms of social emotional learning, there's a lot of talk of social emotional learning right now in education, and it's really around like students being self-aware, being able to manage themselves, being able to relate to others, and kind of be responsible decision makers. So how can we implement that into Tier 1 instruction so that students are getting that all throughout their day in their classrooms? How do we integrate it through the whole school building? And then how do we explicitly teach it to those students who need to be explicitly taught and they're not able to pick up on what's happening around them? And then, ongoing support to paraprofessionals and teachers. regarding challenging behaviors. And challenging behaviors isn't always negative. You know, behavior is really communication. And so when students are doing these things and they're communicating with us, they're unhappy about something, how are we responding to them? And by the way that we're responding to them, are we making it worse or we're making it better? If a child is trying to escape a math task and we never make that child make up the math task, they're gonna keep doing it every single day because math might be difficult for them. So kind of looking and modeling and teaching and helping build that capacity across the district so that everybody's responding to behaviors in the same fashion. And one of the things that we need to look at for next year is we have a BCBA contracted right now through Beacon, and those services are going to end at the end of the school year. They're no longer going to be providing support to the schools. And so we would like to switch from a contracted service to having an in-house person, and that person would be able to go around and help the paraprofessionals, the teachers, really look at those behaviors and hopefully keep the out-of-district costs down and be able to keep students here in the district. And again, build that capacity and really go into classrooms and do observations. Because when teachers are teaching, they're not picking up sometimes on the little cues that if somebody goes in and does an observation and is able to pick out why a student's doing what they're doing, we can make some significant changes. And then just incorporating universal design for learning into as many classrooms as possible. We don't all learn the same way at the same time. So really looking at, presenting information in different ways, giving various options for students to share what they know, so it's not always maybe a paper and pencil test, but give them other options to share that information with us. And then, looking at student engagement and how can we better engage students across the district. So that is kind of my update on special education. I don't know if there's any questions.
Of course there are questions.
Of course there are questions.
Covered a lot.
I know, it's like,
Yeah.
but it's sink in.
Give me 20 minutes, Jay.
So one question though that I do have, so you differentiated a little bit, maybe on purpose, maybe not, in regard to autism versus behavioral issues. Some, I don't know, an easy way to categorize that, but behavioral issues driven by other than autism or other physical issues, correct? Is that a way to describe that group that you're
Yeah, I talked
talking
about different programs that would fit, that were separated, yes.
So my question is that a growing group? It sounds like, from what you're inferring, that group is becoming much larger maybe than the other?
Yeah, and I think, again, it's a lot of students that are coming in or have experienced a lot of trauma, so we're dealing with that in the classrooms. And, their world is fight or flight. So we have students that might be bolting out of the classroom because somebody asked them to do something and they didn't want to do it, so they may run out of the classroom or they may fight you, because that's really their coping mechanism. And so that's a lot of what we're dealing with these days, yes.
And look at the numbers of that kids with mental health, behavioral health challenges, which I think the words you were looking for earlier, is surpassing the numbers of kids with autism that we're seeing. Absolutely. If that's what you were asking.
Yeah.
I think it
No,
is. And that's not just Mashpee.
Yeah, it's
That's
Everywhere.
very troubling. That group, because that's really event-driven, social, environment-driven.
Sometimes. Sometimes it's chemically.
Well, but, could be. But that group is,
And again, I think one of the great things about Mashpee is we are always looking at ICE, which is instruction, curriculum, and environment. So we're looking at kind of what can we do in the environment, or with the curriculum, or with the instruction. Or with the instruction to help these students.
right, I mean,
We're not.
that's really a community issue.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think one of the things that has lost a lot of people as well is diagnosis practices have come a long way over the years as well.
Yeah.
So, students or kids that have not
been able to receive the assistance and help they might have needed 10, 20 years ago, are now being diagnosed properly, and we can catch that and provide the services that they need now. So I think that's another reason why the numbers are growing.
Which I guess comes back then to, here in Mashpee, we're very fortunate to have a preschool program. And whether you're seeing that is actually helping to identify children at risk so that we can provide them with the appropriate services.
Yeah, and I know for sure that's helped with the autism population. I don't, because we have a teacher at KCC that works with the students on the autism spectrum. And so some of the students that are coming in preschool, that's where we're seeing the benefit there. In terms of the mental health things, I don't know enough. I haven't been around long enough to know if we've seen students come in preschool with mental health issues that has made an impact later on.
And I guess you have a question?
Yeah, a quick question. I think it would be a benefit to the committee if you could just run over the cost aspect of this and what the district is responsible for as far as a student coming in, how much we are responsible to pay for, how much the state is, if we have to send somebody out, that type of thing.
So I'm sorry, I don't understand, like in general?
In
or?
general, yeah.
It depends on the cost of the school.
Okay.
So I had given you the example, like if it was a DCF type of case, is that the one that you're referring to?
Okay, that's fine.
So if it was a DCF case, it really depends on the cost of the school. So there's some out-of-district programs that are $300 and something thousand. And it all depends, again, on if there's a day placement rate or if there's not, and if it needs to be a 50-50 cost share. It hasn't happened a lot in Mashpee, but it has happened. And it's continuing to happen.
And DCF, we don't get a say
No.
in where they're placed.
We don't get a say where it goes.
So that's a
So it's one of
huge
these
part of
things,
it.
when I'm just letting the committee adjust here as well as myself, is it's one of these things we can't totally plan for.
Absolutely.
And it could happen at any point in time that we're stuck with a
Absolutely.
$50,000 bill.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the only reprieve we get from that, the mini reprieve, is based on what time of the year they come for the first year, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So if they come before April 1st, then let's say they move here February 1st from, I don't know, let's say West Bridgewater. Then West Bridgewater would be responsible for their tuition and transportation till June 30th. And then we pick it up. If they move from West Bridgewater to here on April 2nd, then West Bridgewater is responsible for the remainder of the year and the subsequent year, because by then the budgets have gone through. That is the only recourse, except to say circuit breaker, we would then claim that. But can we plan for it? Absolutely not. There is no way.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question now? I'll just go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So,
You're just getting a phone call.
it's funny, I just got a call.
Yeah, we all just got a call.
She's in town.
Very
Monday.
I'm highly skilled at multitasking.
It actually said maybe help Hanscom.
Did it really say?
Yeah, I said I don't think it is. So your comments made me think about this survey that I learned about when I was at the mask meeting a few months ago. It's called, I think, the Youth Behavior Risk Survey.
The Youth Health Risk.
Yeah, and my understanding is that Mashpee hasn't conducted it in a number of years, but I think it could be a really effective baseline, particularly if we go into school start time changes or other policy changes. And it sounds like it might also help with the special education side of the house. Are you familiar with that survey, or did you ever use those results at DY?
No, we do not.
It goes through the nursing office, the health office.
But I mean, it is emotional health and well-being, and I just wondered if it was.
We weren't, so we did it in another town that I maybe worked in, but we didn't have access to the results in the sped department because it had to be kept. We could keep aggregate, like big, but you couldn't look.
Privacy issues.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's still very valuable information, I don't want to say it's not.
Yeah, and they're just getting ready to do the ESPA, right?
We have a new state screening called ESPER, which is gonna start next week, for
February.
grades 7 and 9. at the
Grade
middle
7
school.
and 9.
It's similar, it's one-on-one interviews with students.
But again, that's confidential.
Grade 7 and 9 next year?
This year.
This
Yeah,
year,
next
next
week.
week.
Next
Oh,
week.
next week.
Actually, in response to what Mark said, so where does that information go? Does that stay?
Mark, you wanna come up to the microphone, please?
Ha! Oh, look at Dr. Curley, so sad.
I think I had to present tonight.
Quick question, I just wanted to know,
Yeah.
like, does it stay in the school? Does it go to the sped department? Does it go home to the parents? Does it go?
It primarily stays within the school.
Mhm.
If we receive information, or the nurse or counseling department receives information of a critical need for services or crisis response, then we do obviously share that with the appropriate parties, including the family. But generally, it's gonna stay within the school, and it's for informative purposes, much like a youth risk behavior survey would be.
Thank you.
A lot of it's concentrated on addiction.
Yes.
A big part of it is on addiction.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Okay. Next item of business is approval of minutes for December 6th, 2017, in the packet. A motion to approve these.
Almost
Sure,
so moved.
yeah. I second.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to be approving the December 6th minutes or the December 20th minutes?
December 6th.
Okay, so this is the meeting before the last meeting.
Yeah, we don't always do it next week.
All right, so we have a motion by George and a second by Jeff to approve the minutes as presented. Any no comments? How do you vote?
Yes.
I abstain.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So 4, 1 abstention. Next item is the report of the superintendent.
Just to let you know, someone from home says that none of the microphones on the tables are being picked up.
Turn them up a bit.
According to my intern. I guess so. Is it my turn?
Yes. Are they on now?
Well, I just turned them up, so maybe it was because they were too low. Because before the meeting starts, we put them low.
Just to note, I think we're about 12 minutes ahead of schedule.
Keep it that way.
Okay. Administrative reports from the principals. We have the Coombs School report from Principal LaValle, 422 students. I do have the monthly article going in the Enterprise this Friday, so a lot of what's highlighted in the principal reports I've included in the newspaper. However, since we are live, I will want to say a few names. I just want to acknowledge the Giving Tree event at the Coombs School and all of the support that it was able to provide families, and thank you to Nurse Stacy, Rachel Corsia, and the PTO volunteers for all their efforts on that event. There's quite a bit of organization required. And then a thank you to Brian Montgomery. He is the halftime music teacher at the Quashnet School, at the Coombs School. And he did an outstanding grade 1 music concert, and he really had the kids involved with sort of a choreography piece of it. It was an amazing concert to watch, to see really what our kids could do and how much fun they had at the same time, and he appeared to be having a great time as well. Congratulations to Kim Palmer. She's received a $500 Cape Cod 5 mini grant. Acknowledging also to librarian Mrs. Smith for hosting the library volunteer breakfast, a small way to say thank you to a group of people that really supports our students in the library. And that's it for that particular report. Then we have the principal report for Quashnet School, Mary Kate O'Brien, 487 students. And I'm going to name some of these supporters. In all 3 schools, there was an overwhelming response from the community and staff members to support families in need over the holidays. And so in Principal O'Brien's report, she's named some of the organizations, and I've tried to gather from all 3 schools. But it's just really, a caring, connected community that we have. But Principal O'Brien wanted to acknowledge the staff, Dina's, our Southport friends, Kiwanis, Knitting Clubs, Barnstable County Sheriff's Department, EJ, Jackstomer Landscaping, the Mashpee Police Department, Cape Cod Church, Toys for Tots, Mashpee Orthodontics, and the Mashpee Town Hall. They supported approximately 75 Quashnet families, and that's very important. She would also like to thank the following staff members who volunteered their time at the second annual Family Pasta Dinner. It was a very nice event, and these are examples of the amazing faculty and staff that goes above and beyond to make it nice for our families. So Mrs. Porter, Mrs. Stroshine, Mrs. Babbage, Mrs. Littleton, Mrs. McHugh, Mrs. Stickley, Miss Sweeney, Miss Avchez, Miss Forsberg, Mrs. McBride, Mrs. Jagat, Mrs. Emery, Miss Manning, Mrs. Morrison, Mrs. Blunt, and Mr. Gus Stickley for all of their work, and I also want to thank Principal O'Brien in that respect. They served 200 meals, which was really nice. Upcoming events district-wide, but she had it on her report, is the Indian Ed Parent Committee meeting is next Tuesday night, 5:30 at the high school, and then there is a winter concert on the 9th, same night here at the Quashnet School. I believe that's a chorus concert at 6:30. Would you like to add anything else, either principal that I really don't?
I do just want to add that the 99 also supported our families, and they were not on that list, so we do appreciate that as well.
Thank you. We have the report from Principal Balistracci from Mashpee Middle High School, 273 students at grades 7 and 8, and 464 students, 9 through 12, for a total of 737. There is an upcoming concert next week. It's also a choral concert on January 11th. Also, one change to Principal O'Brien's. She was supposed to have the National Elementary Honor Society induction ceremony tomorrow night at 5:30. It's been rescheduled to January 10th at 5:30 due to impending weather. And then on Principal Balistracci's report, congratulations to Mrs. Amanda Howe on being selected to present at the 2018 ISTE conference. She will be highlighting the global project between MMHS students and students in Laos. Thank you to Mr. Troyanos and his band. They played at the Honor Roll Breakfast for grades 9 through 12, and they really did a wonderful job. And also to Gus Stickley and his crew for making a really nice breakfast for the families. Thank you to the Mashpee Women's Club. They gave $12,000 to support our CTE programs, particularly to have, I believe it was a cold storage unit, and also a couple of editing suites for the new studio that we have. And then we all know about the generosity of the Mashpee Cops to donate the $10,000 for the football Super Bowl rings. And also just a shout out to all of the volunteers who have supported by working at the Mashpee Falcon Nest Annex. And we'll be sending out some thank yous, but really that could not happen without the support of everybody who's given some time, including Dr. Hope Hanscom and her son. And I believe
And those who
Miss Carmen.
watched other people's children while we were at the Falcon Nest volunteering. That was very helpful.
Your
too.
nails looked really good too. No, that was super fun. Is that gonna stay?
We're hoping, we're working on
Any
that.
ideas?
Yeah, I had some questions about whether it was open after the holidays.
Mr. Looney is working on that and setting up the meetings to work out a partnership, because I believe it's very mutually beneficial
Oh,
to
totally.
all involved.
And I have just the third graders to man the store for you, so.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Principal Balistracci?
No, I just wondered if I could reiterate the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe hosting the boys and girls basketball game was really a phenomenal event. It was a packed house, standing room only, and both teams won, both teams played great. It was just a really great community event, so I just want to recognize that and state that I think that's something we want to do moving forward on an annual basis. It was just an awesome community event.
What did the kids think of playing there?
They love it. It's a beautiful, it's a top-notch facility. It was outstanding.
Oh, good.
All right, next we have the report of Dr. Curley for special education. Just to highlight, we have 288 students currently on IEPs, a slight increase from what we reported in November of 17. You can see that they were at the at the Coombe School level in K1 and 2. And then not in your packet, but I do have it, is the athletic director's report. So I'm just gonna share some of the highlights from this past season. This is from Matt Treveri. Senior offensive lineman Ben Bonenberger and junior defensive end Xavier Gonzalez were named Boston Herald Football All-Scholastics. Junior running back safety Devon Ford and junior defensive end Xavier Gonzalez were named the Boston Globe All-Scholastics. Devon Ford was named the Boston Globe Division VII Player of the Year. Mashpee Falmouth, well actually it's Falmouth Mashpee Gymnastics, defeated Barnstable in their opening meet, and this is the first ever win against the perennial power Barnstable. And Mashpee's Hannah Bennett won the gymnastics all around against Barnstable with 34.15 points, which doesn't really mean, I don't understand that. I don't know that you would either. So I didn't read the overall score of the team either, but Mashpee basketball is ranked 5th in the Boston Herald preseason poll. Guards Mike Frazier Sr. and Devon Ford Jr. are on the players to watch list. Senior Katie Wellington came in first against both Carver and Bridgewater in the 600 meters with a time of 1.49.98. 8th grader Kalia Eaton came in first against Carver in the 1,000 meters with a time of 3 minutes 52.66. 8th grader Alexa Garcia came in first against Carver in the 1 mile with a time of 6:30.35. And former Mashpee basketball player Nakia Hendricks is a sophomore at Haskell College and is their leading rebounder and leader in blocked shots. And he, I think, must have been home over the holidays because I saw him at one of the basketball games. So good job, team. Okay, enrollments. This is another board, isn't it? Personnel. So we do have Tim Rumberger here. In our personnel report, Tim Rumberger has been named interim dean of students for grades 10, 11, and 12. And we're very grateful to Tim. He's highly skilled in this area. But the reason that we have put him in as interim dean is because Patrick Dillon, who was hired in September to be our dean, has been called away on military leave. So Tim is in position through the end of this year, and then we will have to determine a plan for next year because Dr. Dillon will probably not be back until at least the end of next year. Yeah. Hopefully he will be very safe, but and we're very grateful to Tim, but we're also sad that Dr. Dillon had to leave. And then the only other personnel change is Sherry Vinitsky has been appointed the Executive Administrative Assistant at the Mashpee Middle High School. So, she was here before in an administrative assistant role at the high school, the front desk person.
Okay.
And prior to that, she was at the principal.
Thanks for coming, Tim.
Yeah, so this
He
is
was
Tim
different.
Rumberger for all who do not know him.
It's an honor and really how humbling it is to be part of such a great administrative team. As Jamie had mentioned, the NTSS process, ICE, and really the student-centered philosophy and approach that guides everything in Mashpee is something he already was a part of as a department chair and teacher, but now being part of the leadership team gives me a different way to embrace all the great things that are going on here in Mashpee. Great to be in Mashpee.
And just to add, Tim was an assistant principal at one time. I don't know how many years you were there at the middle high school, and then he spent 2 years as an assistant principal working with me. So it's an advantage for all of the kids that he knows and the families, and he's very student-centered, so we're happy to have him in that spot.
So are you gonna run some of your meetings in French and Spanish, just to keep everybody on their toes? Or
Oh, wait.
some added PD?
Added skill set,
Yeah,
there you
that's
go.
right.
That's good. Okay, enrollments, the total, we already went over each school, but the total is 1,646 as of December. And,
One question on that, or actually one observation. I had a question asked of me, and it appears to be an error on the Department of Education's website. It says that we have 1,500 students one
for
year.
15-16,
Yeah.
that is correct. There was an error that we determined it had to do with about 150 students that weren't, had to do with our sort of online registration program, but that should have been something that the
Okay.
then data person, the director of technology, should have caught that.
Okay.
And when we caught it, it was too late to fix.
So unfortunately, that
That
will
is-
always look
But
that
it
way,
always looked that way, okay.
even though it's not. a
That's
real-
why on here, this is accurate, what you see here for October 15 is accurate, but Desi, not adjusted.
Okay, thank you.
Because we can send them on the moon.
But, I'm sorry.
Can't change the DESI data.
No.
Let's see, upcoming events are in here. I hit on a few, but you can look at the calendar. You want me to go over those? I'm not sure why I had acknowledgements in here. There was a really nice email about me, but I'm not going to share it, so.
Can you,
No, because I didn't know.
can you, I just wasn't familiar with this, event at the library on the 22nd. It says listening tour.
Oh, no, that's me. Is that the library?
Well, it says it's at the, Mashpee Middle High School Library.
So I think I'm doing it at least 3 times a year this year, but I go and work from those schools, and teachers come in and chat.
Okay.
I listen. That's the listening.
I thought it was like a public thing.
You're welcome to come if you'd like me to listen to anything.
It's like Lucy from Charlie Brown, you know, the doctor is in.
I just wondered if like everyone was free to come talk to you, or just.
And, yeah, I mean, I can do one at the public library. That'd be a good idea. I've not done that yet. But anyone out there is always welcome to stop by my office. I'm always open to a policy. Okay, so I'm going to move to the update on the working groups. The financial roadmap working group, which is George Schmidt and Jeff Foreman and Paul Funk and Dr. Hanson and myself, have probably met the most. We met today, we met a few days ago. What is today?
Christmas break.
Wednesday?
Yeah.
Oh, Christmas
During
break,
Christmas
that's right,
break,
Wednesday
because
we
we're
did meet.
hardcore.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. So we'll be sharing out about that a little bit later, I think, that would be a good idea. The protocols to improve efficiency and effectiveness, we have another meeting scheduled Friday. Is the meeting on Friday?
Because we knew it was gonna snow.
Yep.
That's right.
So that's how effective it is.
That's efficiency.
Very.
Mess around.
Just knows
The policy guidance oversight working group, which is Chris Santos and Nicole Bartlett and myself, I think Hope's joining that one. We're working with Jim Hardy from MASC. We were supposed to meet on the 21st and Jim was ill. So I believe we have one on the 11th. And then the sort of 2A goal in terms of community relations and becoming, exploring all the options that we have there to build a better partnership is Nicole Bartlett and Jeff Gorman. We have not met again. Do we have a meeting set up?
I thought we did, but I
Gail
just tried to look
scheduled-
for it. Yeah, I couldn't find it.
I think you could, okay.
Just tried to
I'll
look
I
for
double
it.
thought
check
she
with
contacted us to schedule, but I feel like it was in February or something weird,
Well,
like
we might
not
do that
sooner.
So we'll follow up on that.
Okay. We'll move on to specifically unassigned or unfinished business, the update on the question of window roof door compliance practice.
Okay, I'm going to read a little blip that I have going in the newspaper. And I also want to say that on January 11th at 9 a.m. is the next meeting of sort of a larger group that includes the project manager and the architect, and I presume the general contractor will be at that meeting. And I'm not quite sure what we'll be doing at that meeting, but we'll be there. But what I have written, based on what Mrs. O'Brien has shared, is that the general contractor has been hired for the Quashnet School Repair Project. The total scope of the project now includes the new roof, replacement of all exterior doors and windows, the EFIS system, which is the stucco on the exterior, and then bathrooms will be brought up to ADA code. Now, I know that when Mr. Gorman and I were in the building and construction meeting, planning and construction, it looks like the overall bid, the bigger bid, is coming in significantly lower than the original budget. So I believe Catherine Laurent was going to work on a change order, because at the time we originally planned everything, Minimal ADA bathroom changes were gonna be made, so you would fix one sink and leave two ugly sinks that are original to the building. So they have a cost estimate for that, and she was going to explore adding that in since it's looking like it would come in lower, so I'm hoping for that, because we want nice bathrooms. Okay, so then Mrs. O'Brien wrote, although the bulk of the work will be done over the summer, we will see signs of activity and prep work potentially starting soon. Over the past vacation week, contractors measured all the windows and exterior doors. Measured twice, right? Is that what they said? Some prep work in the ceiling near the art room is expected over February break, and the entire building will be power washed over April vacation. There will be construction beginning soon after that, and Principal O'Brien wants to reinforce the focus is on student learning and safety first. All the contractors on school grounds will have background checks and be issued a pass to be here. And once the dates and the work are solidified, she'll share the information. Sorry. I got it. Okay, that's it for the update.
All right, so moving on to the finance working group, the FY19 budget recommendation.
She's got some. That'll be cool.
So,
Are you starting, Paul? You're not gonna start?
Oh, you want me to start?
Sorry, I just happened to pass him a finance question.
We have been meeting with the town manager on Tuesday. Wednesday, today we met the finance group. When we left the town manager's office yesterday, we had a budget of 1.77% increase. We had submitted a 2.97% increase or a 3% increase, which was basically level service, very level service. The school committee asked to have a 4.45% budget increase. So we've had a number of them that have been presented to the town manager. After meeting on Tuesday with the town manager, we were kind of at a stalemate. He just said that to balance the budget in the town, 1.77 would come back to the increase in the school. It's not hard to realize that if you have raises and steps of 3.3, it's just the percentages don't work out. So we will have to use our choice money to offset the 1.77. At this juncture, the town manager did call me shortly after the meeting on Tuesday afternoon, and we had a discussion, and he did come up with $50,000 out of free cash, which is about halfway to get us to the 2% increase, which we finally ended up with. And I've been working with Jeff and George in trying to get it up as much as we can to over 2%. But that's where we are right now. And in the budget, we have everyone that's currently employed will be employed next year, plus a BCBA, plus a tech repair person will come in, because as we toured some of the buildings, especially up at the high school, a lot of those closets have home books and things that could be repaired, technology. So we're going to have a part-time person, very part-time. So our total budget was $22,231,520. The offset for the funding was total school choice money of $450,000. total circuit breaker money, which we use every year anyways, but this year, we're using this year's circuit breaker money of $467,000 to offset the other districts, and athletic receipts, and I always do an estimate based on this year, 25,000 out of the revolving. So, sometimes we use that, sometimes we don't. That's what we have, and I'll leave it to my colleagues.
Well, I think, it changes, so hopefully this will
The net appropriation from the town is $21,289,000.
Noted.
Noted.
The what?
Noted. Go ahead.
All right, we're moving on. $21,289,520. Questions?
And just so you know, the budget summary that you just received is a work in progress. Whatever decisions you make, Hope and I have it as a doc, and we did share it with all of you as a doc, but I have to email it to a specific person before 11 tomorrow for publication on Friday. So, I mean, we can edit all night through the Google Doc.
All right, the magic of Google.
Wow.
That's right.
All night, huh?
All night.
So, the meeting,
Do taxes.
yeah. So I mean, there's really not much to say about the meeting. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I came out, we talked about the working group today, was we came to this discussion very late in the game. And there was very little that we could do sitting around that table, with the exception of kind of express our disappointment in certain things and try to explain some of the misunderstandings about how the budget works and how the flexibility in the budget is not fluff. It's important because we're planning for things that you really can't budget for 2 years in advance. A certain example of what Dr. Hanson said, which was the potential out of districts, the potential for a flood of students to roll into the district, and we have to hire another teacher. We also had a really good discussion. There was some serious misunderstandings about how the school choice money works, and we had a discussion, a very brief discussion, to bring that up, that comparing the $5,000 for school choice to the net expenditure per pupil, which is just, you can't compare the two. So I mean, there was a lot of back and forth, and there was a lot of head nodding, but ultimately we needed to have this conversation last October, to really set the record straight. And I know that we have a plan in place moving forward to get to that point. Unfortunately, it puts us in a strained situation right now with, to be honest, I think, with even the working group was kind of split. George is more apt to fight for some more money. I was more on the lines of having a discussion about how acceptable this was to the rest of the committee, the actual budget that Paul presented us. We've only really have two options, and one of them is to accept this budget, or the other one is to fight it at town meeting. And I can't think of any other options that we have. So that's where we're here at. So I'm going to step back and let you discuss nuts. Go ahead.
Just one other, and I'm going to kind of entertain with the town manager. In the past, we have used our choice money to purchase Chromebooks. Kind of a lot of it went into technology, and now we're using it to fund our operating budget. And as I explained to the town manager, we did use the choice money for Chromebooks and these clear touch televisions and so forth. And we did not go to the CIP, the capital
improvement program.
Capital improvement to get monies. And the town manager now wants us to do that. So that means that he wants to see the choice money in the budget, offsetting the operating budget. But if we want new library furniture, then what's going to happen is we would go to CIP. So just to give you some idea. And George feels that the town manager also asked me, before he gave us the $50,000, he said, is there any capital in the budget? And I said, no, it's strictly operating budget, day-to-day operation.
And he said if there was operating, he would be willing to go back and reopen capital improvement and kind of get that out of our budget. But this is strictly operational. This is salaries, this is transportation, this is special ed, out of district. I told him that as far as the schools go, I will not ask them to go any lower than they are now. We're showing negatives on the expense side. So we did get, you know, I think we did get our point across, how well it works going down the road. And we all talked about we're kicking this can down the road by not funding it fully. So we did have some nice discussions. Everybody left as friends, which, you know, we wanted. We don't want to pit the town against the schools or anything, so.
And you made a good comment. We made it very clear that the level service budget estimate for this year is actually 6% increase from last year's budget. And that by funding us to 2%, that next year the gap is even wider, probably in excess of 8, almost 9%.
Right.
So,
and we kind of had graphs to show that and so forth. So. I'll let my committee people, if they'd like to make any other comments.
So I guess it would be good to hear from George and his observations from the committee.
My observation is that obviously I would like to have a little bit more money in here, and I don't foresee any reason that we're going to be able to get it. So what I would like to do is that the town manager has offered to open up the capital improvement, there's a capital stabilization fund from which money could be drawn, and if we are willing to submit a proposal for that, that would be looked at. And I'm thinking if we can have the auditorium paid for example, out of the capital stabilization fund, that would compensate for what we're seeing here. So I would go for it, provided we take an provided we include that as part of our budget process. This is stuff that we want to have done. If there's money available, my feeling is that why should we try and eventually get it out of the school budget when we're not going to be able to do it, but if there's money available, why don't we take that opportunity? That's my feeling. So I would support it if we are willing to at least submit something for the capital stabilization fund. I know the superintendent, my other chair, co-task, whatever, working group, whatever we call ourselves this week, are not in favor of that, but that is the way
it's not that we're not in favor. I just don't want to misconstrue, I believe, what the town manager's intentions were when he said he would reopen the CIPC to bidding. Was that the way I understood it was his intention was, yes, I'll reopen it so that you can remove any capital expenditures out of the budget, which would ultimately lower the budget. But I also understand where you're coming from, that now we're also getting an improvement. We're taking a 2% budget as opposed to the 4.5 that we needed, or actually 6% we needed. But we're asking for CIPC funds so that we can improve the auditorium.
or anything else that the committee would like, the furniture, football field, the grass in the field, that sort of thing. I mean, there's a whole mess of things, but we've been very generous giving back money to the town. We funded $500,000 in terms of the Quashnet, 600,000 plus another 100,000 plus another 100,000, so $650,000 that we put forward for the window project. If the town is interested in us applying for some money, and the town understands that we don't have any capital expenditures in here, this is strictly operating budget and the funds that we're taking is used for that, then I feel that why not try for it? And if the committee is willing to go along with that, I would go along with this number, although I'm not happy with it. I think it's an acceptable solution.
All right. Chris?
First, I do want to say that for the most part, I concur with you, but I understand that things are kind of tied a little bit because we're a little late. But that leads me to my question. So when this was presented and the information was given that we are 6% behind actual, potentially gonna be 8 next year. How did you, I don't need any quotes or anything, but how did you feel that that was received? Did it seem like it was received as a note that next year we may actually have some kind of real talk, you know, in the early stages, or was it more of a, okay, you know, I mean, like, this is what I wanna know.
The town is in the same position. I mean, they are cutting back, they are not funding positions, they're doing everything they can. There's $1.5 million hole which they are trying to fill. And we're asked to pony up more or less for our stuff.
So
We
that was
said
really the
that this was
response.
unsustainable, the way we're going, and they understand that. And the town understands it the way they're going. You know, unless some other income comes in. There are projects that are in the works, but you can't plan on that. There's the talk about the marijuana stores in town, which would bring in a substantial amount of money. If that's passed by town meeting. I mean, there are other options for money coming in, but at the moment, we have to deal with what we've got.
Just a couple, I was just gonna add on to that. You know, there's Mashpee Commons, that you mentioned Mashpee Commons expansion and so forth, that would bring more tax money into that's considered new construction and not under the 2.5. He's concerned about the vocational school, the debt exclusion and passing, and if it doesn't pass, the town is still on the hook for the payments.
$750,000.
So, you know, those are the things that he's got under his umbrella, that he, you know, if the debt exclusion passes, you know, he's being very conservative and very cautious on the funds. And we made it, I think everybody left that meeting saying, we're kicking this can down the road. I mean, that wasn't, he didn't say, oh, it wasn't 6%.
I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
Was it
no.
at least openly received?
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So
Yes.
next
Oh, yes.
year,
Oh, yes.
if we were to go along with whatever we decide today,
Yeah.
next year, we're gonna have this conversation again. Next year, are we gonna be sitting, trying to explain everything over and over again? You know what I mean, just trying, that's the sense I'm getting at.
I knew that answer.
Except to
So
say.
you get that feeling, so that's what I'm asking, you get that feeling.
Chris, can I just say that you have a plan, the working group is going to start the budget process for FY20 in March.
No, I understand that.
So that tells me we won't be sitting here, we might be sitting here saying, oh, we did all this work and it didn't matter, but you're not gonna be behind the time, which is what Jeff was saying, it's not too late.
And I guess my point is, we can't predict the future, but obviously everybody has a feeling of how, I wasn't at the meeting.
Oh, so
I don't
you're
really have a
gauging like
meeting
the,
how
okay.
the flow went.
I'm sorry.
No, it was fine.
Did it?
It was fine, it was
It was
very,
fine.
yeah, it was very receptive.
It was very open,
Yeah.
it was very honest, it was friendly, it was,
I mean, they're concerned about the debt, they're concerned
They're
about
concerned about
not
that.
having an override in 2020.
That doesn't-
That's what they're prepared
That's the
for.
big thing. And you know, down there, you did talk about possible, and it's all possible.
You're still
It's not-
talking about that?
What's that?
The potential override?
yes. It might be a year out, but it's still,
Didn't go.
But I mean, he's talking about additional revenue too,
Yeah.
but it's a
without
possibility.
additional revenue, there will be, unless, you know, we're looking at overrides in 2021, something like that.
Not buying it, that's just,
No, it's not just you.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know what there's not to buy. I mean, they didn't say that, you know, we talked very, very candidly about the strides that we've made as a school
Yeah.
district over the last, 4 or 5 years, including the increase in our levels, the number of awesome, alternative career paths that curriculum paths that we created in the high school. I mean, I think we talked about at least 5 or 6 different examples of things that our concern was, is that as we go and get farther and farther apart with our level of service, at some point something's going to give, and we don't want to lose that momentum, because we are, I don't want to say that's part of it. I think it's partially self-generated belt tightening, and again, I mean, I don't know how you can respond to that, but it said that, there was a head bob, there wasn't anybody raising their hand and rolling their eyes or anything like that.
Yeah.
I really do think they get it. But I think there needs to be, I think Go ahead, what you can say, George?
I was gonna say, fully understand when we show them that our labor increase for civil services is 3.5%, and we're getting 2.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, that's not what I'm
Yeah,
saying I don't
okay.
buy. As a resident of the town, all I'm saying is I don't buy that there is nowhere else that the money can be taken from except for the school systems. I believe there is, and I'm not gonna get into this, is not the meeting to get into
Yeah.
it. I believe there is money elsewhere that may not be properly being spent, that could be used for better in the school system. I
Yeah.
understand that, but that's what I'm saying, why when they talk about this override, that's what I say, I don't buy that.
I got you. Well, they did want to make one comment, and, you know, again, it's just, I'm just the middleman person, was that the 250, you know, the $250,000 that we were off, they said at this point, where they were at as the town fiscal management, that $250,000 would have to be removed from another department. There's no other place to get it. That's what I've been told, right, during the meeting. Because he had gone into the free cash level that he was comfortable with. He actually moved a little bit farther into that to help us kind of come into the middle. But that's how we kind of walked out of the meeting. If we want $250,000, another department's going to have to provide that money to the school department. And so it's, you know, it's not in somebody's mattress. So, you know, so.
I get that.
Just, I know, just so the rest of the committee, we set a floor of $50,000. In other words, there's $500,000 in choice, and we offset it by $450,000. So we wanted, it was, you know, we went back and forth whether we should have a floor, and we decided we would have a floor of $50,000.
But didn't he make you find another 50 to match the 50 that he gave us?
In reductions. Yeah.
Yes, so.
Well, yeah.
It's all, just let me know when I'm allowed to talk.
Floor is yours.
Move to adjourn. 5 minutes.
So the part that I take issue with is that I get that there are these, that as a revolving fund, there are these wide parameters for the use of school choice, and that they can be used to offset our operating budget if we, the school committee, choose to allow that. But right now, the town is making us dependent on choice funds as an income stream to keep our services level. And that is wrong. And it's a problem that has grown. So I was shuffling the papers with Paul during the meeting to find out how much that number was last year. So what I keep hearing from the town and from some selectmen is we need to be using these choice funds. You need to spend them. You need to spend them. Well, we are spending them. And last year we offset the budget by some $320,000 in choice funds, and this year it's $450,000. And we managed to eke out this floor of $50K that we have really no idea whether that is reasonable, appropriate, and it puts all the risk on us, not on the town. So I think that I feel like that $50K as our, not that you didn't fight hard for that, but it scares me a little bit to only be left with $50,000 in our school choice account for operating it for anything that we need next year. And the fact that the town is asking us to do that, I think is, it cannot be called. I just read that in the Friday Enterprise, Rodney said that he's requested level services from all the departments. And that's what he's planning for, and that it's a tight year and all that stuff. Well, we're not getting level services. So I appreciate your correction to the thing that's going to go in the paper. I think that's exactly the kind of language that I was looking for to say, is that we supplied a level services budget. It was deemed to be too high by the town, and we have to use these other funds to offset it. The only issue I have is referring to circuit breaker funds like they're somehow discretionary, that we can choose not to offset the budget in any given year with those, because we use them every year. So
Have to by law, you only
Yeah.
have 1 year to spend. You can spend them in the year you receive them or in arrears.
yeah, so
It's not a revolver.
I mean, I think that I wanted to just be clearly say that our choice students represent about 6% of our student population. We have a very conservative school choice policy that we don't add expenses to bring choice kids into this district. We don't add teachers, we don't add classrooms, we don't add buildings, we don't add buses. We identify where we have spots, we fill those spots, and that to me is very prudent and responsible, and in exchange for that, the town says, great, we'll take that money. So we're trying to manage the schools appropriately, and they are putting us at risk, is the way I see it. So I'm not saying that there needs to be a fight on town meeting floor, but I don't think we're being transparent with the town and the voting town meeting members to walk into town meeting with a 2% increase and say that that's level services. Because it's not, and next year, we're not gonna have another $150,000 in choice funds to add on when we're short again. So I just feel like that needs to get out to the public. If the money is, like you said, it's either there or it's not. I'm not disputing that, but this problem is growing and growing and growing. And to your point, Chris, I mean, last year when we got a $29,000 increase in FY17, I'm sure you guys got promises from the town that you were not going to have to fight that battle again, that there was going to be some recovery of that cut. And I don't know if this is supposed to be it, but it doesn't seem like it to me.
I don't know if there was a promise.
No, I don't remember.
I don't recall any promise on that line, but I could be missed that meeting.
I mean, it's great that we can get support for capital projects, but we don't have any.
We don't know about the auditorium in the school.
Well, I mean, that wasn't part of this budget.
No, it isn't, but I'm saying if we can get it paid for out of town funds, that's at least some sort of.
And then they'll reduce our budget by that amount, so.
No.
I'm just not sure it'll work out the way you think it will.
So a couple questions that I have. From what we talked about at the last meeting, what's in, what's not in? So we have the BCBA, that's totally in, correct?
Yep.
We have a part-time repair person for technology, that's in, correct? What? Yeah, that was the next one. Volunteer coordinator.
Not in.
That did not
That
happen.
was going to come from choice as a part-time position. That's the last discussion we had.
Okay, so that is not in this budget. All right. And Karen Falcon is included in the budget, correct?
Technology,
And
which we
technology,
zeroed out
right,
last year. Tech repair, VCBA.
okay.
Remember he cut a quarter, from my original, but I'll call it the
The original
superintendent's budget,
budget,
the 2.9,
Yeah,
250,000 out of district. Now, if I have someone move in, I have to put that back in, so that's gonna be part of choice. If I have to use it. Right now, it doesn't look like I'll have to use it, but if I ever move in, I'll have to use part of it, but I won't have to use all of it. So, and that's about it.
I guess the question is, going back to the question I asked Jamie earlier, do we have enough money in there? If we have, it's going to cost $200,000.
Do we ever have enough money in out of districts? I mean, I try to budget, first of all, Jamie gives me there's certain ones that are gonna go out, they're not gonna come back, and then I have to kind of find a figure, a buffer that we may have to use or we may not, and that's probably 200,000 or 175,000, but if I get 200, I believe this year we had last year we had a $200,000 movement.
And I think it's important to know, and we talked about this briefly, Go ahead, George, I don't know your thought.
No, that's okay, I was just, the thing is that if we get into a disastrous point, we don't wanna have to go back to the town.
If we get into a real disastrous point, as you referred to it, I would be using, now, we're into FY, now think about this.
You'll
We're into
use it.
FY, I would be
Okay.
using
The
FY
following year's money.
20's
Okay.
money to
Yeah.
offset
To
that.
offset it.
I
have
yeah, I wanna
Well, or you would be going to town meeting in October or in May, asking for additional
Additional
funding,
funding.
You could do that.
right?
I do want to clarify, sorry, I'm sorry, go ahead. But I do want to clarify, though, that this, although we're offsetting the budget by the choice money, although we don't have the same flexibility we had before, where we had that pool of money available, that we knew it wasn't going to get touched unless we touched it, this money's still available for us to spend. It's just we have to be much more careful about how we do it, because there is obligations that could come to offset it. As the school year goes forward, and we get into the point where Paul gets a really good understanding of how the numbers are feeling, which you usually get in the 6-month point of the budget, you can really figure out, you're like saying, okay, I really know what's going on with the budget, I can get a good understanding of how much of that actual offset I need to use to close the budget. We may come to the point where, oh, we're gonna have $200,000 of school choice money that we do not have to spend, what do we wanna do with it? And the way I think this changes is kind of a weird way we're changing the business, because well, we have this $180,000 turn back every year, we're not gonna have that anymore. Because the money that's gonna be left over is our offsets, not appropriated money.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the way it's gonna get spent?
absolutely. Because right now, on the out-of-district line, after we back out the circuit breaker, use that money, plus the appropriation, I'm still short, let's say, I'll use a figure of $50,000. So the $250,000 that originally was cut out of the, out of districts, I'm only going to $50,000 unless somebody moves in, or we send somebody out, so, I have it,
So we're allowed to use that, we're holding that revolving account for the end of the year expenses, and so if we don't need it, we won't, it carries.
that, that's something you really have to sit down and it's like a show and tell. I mean, it's just.
Well, why
the
haven't
way
we been doing that all along?
Well, we have,
Because we do.
Well, we haven't, because we've been giving money back to the town.
Yeah.
yeah, but we've also spent a whole $500,000 how we want it every year without any worry about obligation.
And we have not turned back any excess funds that we didn't spend out of school choice historically.
Right. So there may be excess funds out of school choice when I get to May, and we look at what's in school choice now, before we get this, and we can make some decisions there.
So, Paul, in theory, what you're talking about is, if there was a budget excess at the end of the year, that was less than the $500,000 that we had for school choice, we could retain that budget excess to replenish school choice, correct?
No, I would spend down everything and not touch choice. That's why I said it's very,
Okay.
Yeah,
very.
so we'll have a lot of
it's-
those account transfers
Back
and,
and
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
One last question for you, Paul. So I know we're talking best case scenario, this would be great if we actually did finish with some surplus at the end of the year. So I remember sitting across this table from you last year, and we got that very minuscule, I guess you could call it, bump in the budget. And the words that came out of your mouth a few times was, we're good this year. I don't know about next year, we'll see. Now, I know things are a little different because now we're level service. What is your feeling? Has that drastically changed? Are you feeling much better about the situation this year than you had thought you would have when you were sitting here last year?
I think it's the same. I feel that using the choice money, if you remember back on the 2.97, I was still using $255,000 of the choice money. It wasn't like, we were using it on the operating budget. no, I feel, you know, pretty good going into next year. I mean, it's not great, but
You were pretty nervous last year, so I just want to see.
Yeah, well, I'm nervous, you know, a little bit. I think going into next year, and I've started, because the FY19 budget is already in, I'm just waiting for them to give me the extra 50,000. So as soon as I get that, I can start moving things, and it looks positive. I was talking with Jamie today, Dr. Curley, about the out-of-district seem to be down a little going into next year. It's not as high, you know, some have aged out and so forth, so. I can't tell you what's gonna happen. Yeah.
Nobody can hear him anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's right, the sound is more.
It's only
And the camera can't see the
January,
even
so-
the lip reading, so,
But,
yeah. Okay, so what we have
we'll
to.
make it work.
What we have
I know
to
you will.
decide this evening is that we have to, we don't have a vote scheduled, but we do have to submit our budget to the newspaper tomorrow by 11 o'clock, some sort of a budget number to the newspaper. Dawn raised the question that we may have to have that in for 21 days. Was that ever?
No, we resolved that.
It's resolved.
It's not resolved, so we
It
can.
is resolved.
It is resolved.
It's good.
So it's not
Everything's-
21
so
days.
we're fine.
Everything's
Okay.
So we're
Everything's
fine.
good.
So we need to come up to some way of saying what we're gonna do with what piece of paper without voting.
Well, so, one of the
Consensus.
issues that I have with, and now I'm gonna look at Jeff's markup, so if everyone is looking at this, I haven't read through your text, I'm gonna just focus on a comment that I had with it, this earlier. I'm struggling with us breaking out circuit breaker separately. We've never done that in the past. And showing it, you know, as an expense item up above, so we're grossing up our expenses to include it, and then we're taking it right back out, down below. I'm not
In the
sure.
past, I had a line inside the budget. I don't care. My understanding was that you wanted to see everything in the budget and then offset it. Now-
But we don't have everything in. We don't have any of the grants.
No, but I can put the grants in there.
Right, but if we did that, I mean, if we're
It's gonna
truly gonna
increase-
gross it up, we gross it up to include all that, or
Fine.
what we have here is a hybrid.
I totally agree with what you're saying, because I think it's a little, first of all, no one outside of this room knows what the hell circuit breaker is. I can tell you, I didn't know what it was 3 months ago, and I can promise you, no one reading the paper is gonna be like, oh, the circuit breaker money that we get back from the state when we, you know, no, nobody's gonna know. So, and we always offset with athletic receipts. So I would just, why can't we just show the difference that we're offsetting with the school choice funds? To your point, like, we had,
In the past.
here's what we had,
Right.
so is that to your point?
I-
I agree
You
wholeheartedly.
articulated what I wanted to say.
So when I offset the circuit breaker money, I just reduced line 16 by 467. That's exactly the way it has to happen.
Well, we reduce it by 467 plus 25.
No. Circuit breaker and athletic receipts are not the same thing. And I would go down to where it says 205, 632.
It's gonna offset on the
Oh,
line.
I'm sorry, I was
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah,
I'm
and
looking
offset that
at-
by 25,000.
Yeah. That's what I've done in the past. But I
Yeah,
have shown it where the athletics are
Yeah.
in the budget.
right.
That's the only difference. And I can do that, that's pretty easy. And then,
I think, you know, the whole reason that we discussed this, and I get both your points, it was to force transparency of practices that are already in place. But people think that we're slipping the stuff behind the
I can
scenes,
do it
and it's not,
inside or
yeah.
outside, that's
It's
all.
just to like force the point home that, yes, we ask for this much money, yes, that's level service, but we have, what we do all the time is offset the special ed program with circuit breaker, and we offset athletic expenses with, athletic receipts. I don't care either way, I mean.
It's just a better
One
accounting
thing, the grants
practice.
you asked about.
It's a better accounting
Because
practice to do
those
it this way.
change, but the
Everything
circuit
is
breaker
out
money
there.
we're spending in arrears, like a year ahead, so we know what that number will be. But I will tell you, if we put Title I in here, I would think that would be a very poor choice, because we were cut so significantly last year. At this time, we didn't know it. So there is a difference between bumping it up with grants and bumping it up with circuit breaker.
Right, but there's an assumption, I believe, in the budget for those grants, correct?
Yes, we have people that we're paying out of those grants.
Do you note that in the budget?
No,
No, because it's
Not
shown
in-
net,
no, we can put them in,
I know.
and we gotta take them out.
No, and you don't know what you're gonna get through grants.
No,
That's
we'll
my
have to take a
bigger-
chance.
Yeah.
Or if we don't get the
I don't
money,
think
we lay people
No, I'm
out.
not saying to do that, I'm just saying that's why we don't.
No, I know.
Whereas circuit
I'll
breaker
do-
is it's a money that we know we've got.
Any way you
I know,
want.
but it's an estimate that we baked into our number.
No, it's,
If
Which-
you re-
which
if you
estimate?
really, if you really wanna know
Now, which one's
what
an
it should
estimate,
cost.
Don?
467, but
That's not an estimate.
that's not an estimate.
None of these
That-
figures are
that-
estimates.
That's not an
No,
estimate, that's,
The total salary line is an estimate.
No. Well, it's an estimate in that we haven't hired the BCBA person.
No, it's based upon our actual staff reduced for those positions that are paid through grants.
Correct. So we would put the salaries of those people
Back in.
back in here and deduct them out either down below or inside. I'd have to set up, it's very easy to do.
No, I see what you're
The
saying.
240 grant, I can do the same thing. But I want you to be aware that if we get reduced if the 240 grant or the Title I grant gets reduced, we lay those people off.
No,
Awesome.
I
To me,
know,
the bottom line.
and if we truly want to be transparent to the public,
Not a problem.
which I'm not disagreeing, and we shouldn't be, then they should know that these are estimates. They could be actual, or they could be greater or less, but this is our best estimate. Our budget is based upon these estimates. I'm not sure that we're at that level of precision for this time around. I would.
we do cover that in that second bullet at the top. The two bullets at the top. We're trying to be very transparent, this is a swag.
Right. So, I guess I would suggest not including, not grossing it all up this time, and work towards doing
It won't
that.
take that long.
I'm not,
No.
me personally, I'm not interested in doing all that, I don't know why we would do that.
No.
Just take the other two out, I don't.
Yeah.
Right.
I confused the issue, I apologize. That was not my intention, so I think you're right.
No reserve like that.
No,
I'm sorry.
He said something snarky, what do you think he's
saying?
saying? Right, we're so beyond noted at this point.
So I think that's something for the working committee to take a harder look at, but for where we are today, I would suggest that we show the net, that we've taken the 467 for circuit breaker, put it back, take it back out, up above, same thing for athletic funds, so that the only real offset that we're talking about here is the school choice funding for this time.
I don't have a dog in this fight, I honestly don't care either way.
I would agree with that only because we don't have a choice with the circuit breaker funds, we do with school choice. Circuit breaker funds have
It's
to
gotta go to
back.
special ed. It's strictly
Yeah,
a
right.
special ed.
But school choice doesn't have to,
And the easiest way to handle it,
so.
Chris, is to take it off the outer districts, rather than start going.
Well, that's what I mean, but as far as displaying it on here,
Yeah.
one, like Nicole had stated, it's gonna confuse a lot of people. And two, because we really don't have a choice, it's gotta go back and offset the budget anyway.
Right,
I'd go either way on it, but if I was gonna remove it, that would be
no
one.
problem.
But it's nice to show that we're offsetting
Well,
school choice, because
It
that's
doesn't
something.
have to offset the budget,
What
because
the-
you can carry it over a year.
Yeah,
And there are
this
plenty of
is-
school
this is-
districts who don't.
This is the money we carry.
Right, and my point is that you don't have to use it, if you don't need it for the year, right? You can carry it over to the next year.
No, I can't.
I thought you said you can carry over, because we're spending this in arrears.
Right.
Yeah.
We'd have to
If I was
start
spending-
at some point, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Gotcha. There are districts, and this is when I was talking to other districts at MASC about how they do their school choice. The majority, not all, but the majority, the people that did have school choice offset their budget with school choice. But they did not always use all of their circuit breaker.
Yeah, but they're probably using it in the year that they get.
The year they get it, yeah. So and
Yeah,
then they carry over whatever's
yeah.
left, and they do it the
There
next
you
year,
go.
and they do it,
And then they
they
spend
keep
that.
going over,
They
yeah.
spend that
But
first.
that's where they get their flexibility.
Yeah.
Because of the way we're doing this, we're losing our flexibility a little bit, because we have some obligations to the school choice.
And Jeff, I just, I don't have any evidence to the contrary of what you suggested, but I don't want to put it out there that the majority of all districts who are in the school choice program use their entire school choice budget to offset operating expenses, because we do not know that that's true.
Oh, the people I spoke to, it's true.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I just want to be clear. Because when I talked to the finance person at Mask today that did our training, and I was like, so can you chat me through a little bit of this? And I mean, there are districts where, like Lennox, where 30% of the kids are choice kids.
Mhm.
So, yeah, they're counting on that $1.4 million to actually operate their school, because that's helping make their classroom sizes, more classrooms, and provide academic and athletic opportunities that kids wouldn't have otherwise without that added population. So I think in districts like that, where there is a big
Well, let me clarify, the 4 districts I spoke to,
For
so
unanimous.
all of the districts I spoke to had something to say. No,
You get my point, though.
I do get your point. My point wasn't to use that as ammunition for someone else to say to use school choice. My thing was, yes, they use school choice, but they have flexibility with a different line item. We don't. Both line items for flexibility have been basically pulled out of our control.
Gotcha,
So.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a question. We had talked about for our budgets having a narrative, you know, something that describes the budget. This isn't it, right? This is just what we would normally do. We're not.
This is what would go in the newspaper.
was
The narrative like what you shared with me today would be something that we use when we're presenting to the town. We could use it to present here, we could use it to present to the finance committee. It would not, what you had shown me would not be something that will go in the paper. This is supposed to be relatively brief.
Concise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
but
So,
yeah.
but
No,
so,
it's not the
But I
last.
liked that.
Hurrah.
That's the way.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I can, maybe we can share that with everybody, but I was just kind of poking, you know, we saw a couple, Lexington and other school districts, when they talk about their budget, they have some
Yeah,
slides
it's
and,
beautiful
you
stuff,
know.
yeah.
I think that the one thing that I would propose, and not to take us off this particular item, but I don't think it's a bad thing to talk about the school budget at town meeting. I don't think it's a bad thing to say, hey, town members, voters, this is what we're doing in the schools. This is the upward trajectory we're on. The reason that we're able to do this with such limited budget is because we have Paul Funk and this administrative team, who is, quite frankly, a miracle. I really don't understand how you guys are doing it. If you hadn't found that money from the busing, I mean, being able to shift our transportation costs and save money there, I think we'd be in a lot worse predicament right now. So I think we have a great team, and essentially I feel like we're kind of putting that team at risk if we start to kind of constrain. I don't want to be in the middle. Mashpee doesn't stand for middle in Mashpee.
Right.
Okay, I want to be the best, and I think those people over there, and Patty and Paul all want us to be the best too. And so I think we need to, at a minimum, I would recommend anyway, for your consideration, is that at a minimum, someone from the school district speak at town meeting about what's going well, what we're doing well, and it doesn't mean we have to be in a fight, but I think the voters need to know that, you know, there's a freight train coming right towards us, and we're doing a lot with what we have right now, but it's not sustainable.
So in the past, the superintendent has done presentations under a different context
Yes.
at town meeting. And personally, I think it would be very good for us to request that.
What you could do is, when the number comes up, say hold, and then go up and make a presentation about what we're doing, and then release the hold. That gets around it.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
You know, something short that just shows some faces of the kids in the district, or shows some of the accomplishments. And
But I'd like to get back to tonight, because we do have to worry about this tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and we are rapidly approaching we're 20 minutes past my initial
suggested adjournment.
I like the idea of the way this being presented the way it is, because it has everything out there in the budget as to exactly what we need on line, whatever it is here. The total expense plus salary shows exactly what we need, and then we're subtracting out that which we did. It's just better accounting. It's a much easier picture for people to see. I know it's different, you know, here. But showing the same thing here. In this line, we can say this is everything we think we need at this point in time. And we're getting the bottom number, and here's how we're going to get there, to the bottom number. It
So
just is better accounting.
Are you saying you want the circuit breaker and athletics receipts to stay in there?
Stay there, yeah.
Because you know that ultimately they would be pulled out of the 22,520.
Yeah, but I think it is a legitimate expense that we have.
I mean,
Yeah.
this would go down by,
Yeah, exactly,
whatever
but
that is, 400.
I think that number shows exactly what we need, and that's the number we should be out there presenting.
Even though that's not all-inclusive.
It is as close to all-inclusive as we can get right now. This is a work in progress, but it is certainly more transparent of having the numbers up there that this is what we need, my opinion. I understand what the other guys are saying, but it's just a prettier picture if you have to present it. We need this amount of money, and this is how we're going to pay for it, type thing. Just a personal opinion.
Yeah, and again, I don't care either way. I understand the purpose of why Paul put it in. Of course, we did tell him last meeting to put it in. And now we're changing our minds at the worst possible time.
I'm not changing mine.
But, so, yeah, again, I see both sides of the coin.
I see both sides, but I just think it's a clearer picture of what we're doing.
I don't disagree. I just think if you're gonna put those in, you need to define them.
Define.
What circuit breaker is, what athletic receipts are, and the fact that they're in the budget every year. It makes it
For
look
the
like, it
newspaper.
makes
Rather
it
than
look like
saying
we,
circuit breaker, you know, is an offset to
Yeah.
special ed, it's.
yeah, it makes it look like we were sitting on $1 million that we weren't gonna give to the town, and they made us, you know, but that's not actually true.
No,
So,
Right,
I think we need to, if we can work on that language tonight, that's fine. If you're hard over on it, that's fine, or we could just vote over you.
Well, there's not gonna be a vote, unfortunately.
There can't be a vote.
Yeah, so what, I mean,
There's nothing on you.
hard
You can't
over.
vote, but so we just
But
have
you
to.
do need to kind of decide if you're good with the 2% kind of as a bottom line, wherever we play with insert or take out.
Yeah.
You have to decide, I know you're not voting on your budget, but.
I mean, clearly you want it taken out, you want it
Like
kept in.
project.
I really don't care.
Yeah,
Chris was more towards taking it out, and Don was more towards taking it out.
I mean, from what I'm hearing, you know, it sounds like everyone is arriving at some level of comfort in total with the numbers presented. And then the only real issue is in the presentation of how those numbers get reflected for the newspaper. I mean,
And I, there is some power in limiting the presentation to just talking about school choice, as opposed to bringing in grants that we, you know, it's more impactful, you know, by.
I live by the less is more.
Well, if you go by the biggest buzz that's out there
Yeah.
and has been for
Yeah.
several years in the newspaper, it's about this,
Yeah.
not the other two things.
So,
I'm sorry, George, I think I'm starting to lean towards just taking it.
so unless there's a overwhelming groundswell, I think where we're headed here is we'll just show.
I move to adjourn.
choice. We'll end up just showing school choice as the offset. I do think we need to identify what school choice is for that other 50% of the population that does not know. And we'll look at this and go, it's school choice.
You just gotta be careful turning this from a brief to a not brief.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So,
getting too late.
I had written one sentence on that, just defining, well, I defined everything.
Yeah.
To define it as school choice funding is the net funds received from students from other districts attending Mashpee, offset by the funds that Mashpee has to pay out for students from Mashpee to attend a school. And I think that's not,
But that's not
that's
true.
not correct.
No.
That's
Yeah.
not true.
But it's really, it's those funds received from other districts.
Yeah, the 5,000 per student for people who don't live in Mashpee who have been approved to come and be a choice kid, the majority of which, at one point or other, lived in Mashpee.
Right. So, you know, we can make a laborious one, or you can just make it very short and sweet and say, school choice. You know, it's funds received from,
I mean, you feel though like you'd want to make sure they understand that this is something the school committee votes on annually, one, to participate in school choice, and two, is the number of seats. It's not that there is, it may change next year, it could be a different committee that decides you don't like choice, like, I don't know.
It's not
but
new,
then
it's the first
it
time we've
becomes
had to
much
offset
more
it.
laborious.
Oh, no, I know.
I think it needs to be a single sentence, just defining.
I think that, I mean, if I, looking at it, because I was an idiot who raised my hand to edit this, I would actually take the level service definition that I put in here, bulletize it, and do a school choice fund, like bullet the definition, just to close that paragraph out.
So are you talking about the paragraph that is?
You know, I put a level service,
So move the level service budget up to the first,
The level service budget enables us to meet education, no.
move it up to the prelim.
I spell it out somewhere, you had it spelled out somewhere.
Well, you
right?
did add, if any capital technical program improvements, you added.
Oh, yeah. And so I mean, I would use that as make a bulletized, and then you could put school choice funds are defined as, or are.
And can I also add that they're not guaranteed in some way in terms of the year? I think that if you're gonna explain what it is, then it should be
Just throw
understood.
the word variable in there, you're good, that's good.
Did I say that?
No, I.
Oh.
throw the word variable.
So, do you
As long as that's
two-
clear, that's important.
Do you two want to take a minute while we're discussing the rest of this to come up with proposed language for school choice?
Yes, we do,
Since you have
Mr.
the,
Chairman.
Because we've
Technology?
been told we violently type.
Yes, that's why you told us.
Mine is
You have the
aggressive.
technology
We're getting close to 8:30.
Are you talking about putting two bullets under here or adding?
No, down. Because I tried to spell out level service, what a level service budget is, and I put that bullet, I just bulletized that in school. Or actually, school choice first to level service below that.
I like that.
Let me get this right, I only have to do it once. You only want to see here the choice, the 450.
Everybody I
One offset, just the 450.
They think they know.
It's gonna change just for you.
Oh, yeah. So it's all gonna be 2% still, but everything's gonna, yeah, got it, yeah.
I got the, I know the number change.
Well, I can do the numbers right now.
Yeah, let me go back.
And I'll do them too. I have this, so I will be careful to make sure they, I can do them too.
I think the general consensus is the bottom line number. If you guys need to change something and get that in your presentation, you'll do that, right?
I just put the 467 where I usually have it in the past, it's gonna pull it right out.
Okay.
So it's gonna go from, I believe the out of district is, they have it right here, actually, 1,648,980. Boom, when I take the 467, that's gonna bring it down to whatever. and the 25, it's gonna come off the 205, 632, that's gonna get decreased. So I can go back to my office, put those things.
No.
Yeah, I can tell
They
you what
have-
they're.
I see
No, I mean,
Chris-
you can
Chris
do it on
might
this
have-
eventually, I can do it on this.
I was just gonna say, you're really good, because if you remember last year, I almost promised that this year, I was taking this to the town hall, the town meeting floor. If you remember that last year, I said that, and you're
I do
good.
remember that.
You're good.
I do remember that.
You settled me down.
So the final bottom number is gonna be 21,289,520. Oh wait, that's not right. Oh yeah, it's not gonna change. Well, that's amazing how that worked
You
out.
can find a way to get that to change, that would be great.
There you go, okay. But the requested level service funding is gonna be 21,739,520. So,
Yeah, that number won't change, right? Those two
yep,
numbers.
perfect.
Okay.
It's amazing, it didn't change at all, not even a penny.
All right. Any other,
Yeah,
so I guess the question is whether or not we need to put anything in here in regard to defining or talking about what school choice funding is.
So this
I
is-
did already.
Right, so now the general summary
Oh,
of
she
the
did,
proposed FY19 budget is bulleted. The first bullet is the budget for fiscal year 2019 or FY19 covers the period blah, blah, blah. Second bullet, only by offsetting projected expenses of school choice funds are we able to maintain a level service budget for FY19.
No, no.
No, you have to use
You have
that,
to
you
use
have to use
Jeff's
that.
language.
Yeah,
Jeff's language.
I took the doc that I had. I did not mess with your language.
Our level
That's
service.
not my
Oh,
language.
Oh, but his this.
and I don't wanna bulletize the whole paragraph. I
Yeah.
just want 2 bullets below the paragraph where it's got a definition for school choice and a definition for level service. I said I'd do this for you and submit
Well,
it.
you all
The
have the
chairman
shared
asked me to do it, so I was doing it.
Oh, really?
So that we can all have a look at
That's
it.
your second strike.
Oh, don't
Got
even
your
start
hands
at 8:33 on a snow night.
Good.
You're gonna be able to look at this and choose to go home because it's shared with all of you.
Okay.
I don't wanna
But it wasn't yours.
I'm sorry.
And the one that's currently as a doc, did not have the Jeff
Oh.
in it, so she's looking at
Thank you,
something
ma'am.
different. But.
So when she says it, it's okay.
She has
Care about
the,
numbers. As far as the wording goes, come up with something.
she
I'll
says
do it.
school choice, this is what we have. School choice funds are funds received by the district for non-resident students who attend Mashpee Public Schools. These funds are variable and the amount received by the district varies from year to year.
Which you can only use variable and varies, I get that, so somebody else can
Maybe we
fix
could
that.
just say these funds,
Well, I was told by Mr. Gorman to use the word variable.
I was just making a suggestion.
I was-
Yes, these funds.
I only know 6 words.
Well, and the only thing I might add
Noted.
is you could just say these funds are variable and this program has to be approved annually.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
that's better.
Be voted.
Yeah,
Yeah, it has to be voted.
Excellent.
yeah, that's perfect, that's perfect.
All right.
Which is very.
Bolded, underlined, italic.
No, I
Yes.
think we're done. We all agreed on the,
So we're good with the bottom line number, we're good, we need to put some wording in here to define stuff, and we can just move on smartly?
I think so.
Okay.
All right.
now, my suggestion, what are we doing with that?
Can we make that just a complete different discussion?
If we're going to do it, we have to do it now.
Oh, I'm sorry,
because
that's right.
Do what?
The capital improvement,
The capital
CIPC.
improvement thing, if we're going,
Oh,
my suggestion of putting in something for capital stabilization fund, a request. I'm gonna say, for
that
lack
has
of
to,
any,
that has to be,
Well,
Hashed
he will
out.
open up the CIPC, the committee's closed.
Well,
It's done.
No, I don't know
let me
that,
clear that, the language on that. He said, the first question that he asked me was, do you have any capital in your operating budget?
No.
And the answer was no.
yeah.
And he said, because if you did, I would be willing to open up, CIP, and get that out of your budget,
Mhm.
move it over here, and keep your budget with the 2%.
So that's something for 20.
So, and I said, no, that's when he offered the $50,000 out of free cash. It did not come from another department, we have to discuss it. So I don't, it's worth a shot if you want to do it, and I'm not saying he's gonna just guarantee that.
Are you talking about for FY19?
I'm talking about FY19, yes.
I mean, the answer is no if we don't ask.
That's true.
But do do we have a project that has been defined?
Yes, the auditorium.
And we have an estimate of what it would
Yep.
cost?
Yep. And I'd probably increase that a little bit,
For inflation.
200.
about 200,000.
I'm okay with that, because I think the town should pay for it anyway, because it's used for it.
So,
They
yeah,
want it in the school.
personally, I'm fine with submitting it. I
Okay,
don't know, whether it's
so then I'm fine with the
good
2%.
for this year,
Well,
next
if, yeah,
year.
if they support opening this, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, well, I mean, he offered, so let's see what happens. If nothing goes. Yeah. Okay, it's 8:40.
So,
Now, I can move to adjourn
You're awfully
anytime I'd like.
punchy to,
so, the next item is subcommittees.
Okay, well, wait a second,
Yeah,
before we leave that topic, so,
before we leave
you
this,
satisfied George, but, have you satisfied me?
in regard to,
Well, I mean, what I'm suggesting is that, if, okay, well, there's two, one is a question, so what I was suggesting is that we, speak at town meeting
Yes.
to alert
so
the
we're,
town to
so we're gonna
the
request.
state of our budget and how this is, if the town gets to talk about some fictional override that could potentially happen, we should talk about the very real problem that we're gonna have next year.
Yeah, so we will reach out, I or Patty will reach out to the town manager to let him know that we want to have time to be able to speak.
Okay.
Is that
Okay?
controlled by him or the moderator?
That's controlled.
Well, it's controlled by the moderator,
Yeah.
but through
Right.
the town manager, so.
And
Oh,
then,
okay.
my second question is, what happens, so this is just to go into the enterprise, this goes in.
Yes,
It implies that we support it, we haven't voted on it yet, but it implies, but we still have this public meeting
we're in a
where
public hearing.
people could turn up or,
Yes.
or between here and then and now, some new information comes to us or something like that. So
That's correct.
how does that affect the process? In other words, what happens on the night, could these numbers change potentially?
Yeah.
Okay,
And we'd be in the same position we are right now.
Right.
so all we're agreeing on tonight is
That's what we're
to-
gonna publish.
what's
Put
going in
something
there.
in the newspaper. We're not
Right.
Then I'm okay.
This is a tentative number.
Okay, I am okay with this tentatively.
Okay,
I agree.
I'm tentatively okay with this, yeah.
Everybody's great.
I'm tentatively okay with our tentative.
What's in the legal doc is now your stuff.
all right, so, a consensus.
I just
None of us.
consensus.
All right, anything else on that item before we try to wrap this up here? Okay, next item is any committee reports, anything going on?
Nope.
Nope, hearing none?
Just one thing we've already brought up, and that's the escort thing. That's already been talked about, but that's going on, so that should probably be other than that now.
Okay,
So good.
Can you forward this to us?
Yeah, take it.
Okay.
all right, anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Anything else that needs to be brought up? Any edification of the community?
No, sir.
Going, we have a motion to adjourn, do I have a second? Do I have a second by Chris, motion by George.
That was
What's
me.
that?
George.
George.
At 8 o'clock.
Who seconded, Chris? Thank
Chris?
you. I wasn't paying attention.
No
No,
worries,
that's
Kathy.
fine, that's
Sorry,
why I
Kathy.
repeated it. All right, Nicole?
Fired. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was worried about that.
sweet.
All right.
It can be done in the morning.